What's happening to you?
I'm the thing men fear. Not a ghost. Something else.
He's talented.
He is a force.
A lot of directors that I know were absolutely desperate to work with him.
It certainly didn't feel like it was his first film. I'm amazed that that was his first.
Luke was absolutely, without doubt, the finest actor I've had the pleasure of working with so far, on every level.
He's sexy.
After the take, everyone was kind of like, whoa, that was a little steamy.
And now, Luke Evans is on the verge of becoming an international superstar, playing the lead in the upcoming epic Dracula Untold.
You are alive because of what I did to save you!
Join us as E uncovers Luke's personal journey from the legendary theatres of London's West End.
Casting directors and directors saw him in one thing, and then they were desperate to kind of cast him in their own projects. It was incredibly rare.
To Hollywood's storied sound stages.
There was a lot of screaming in my head, thinking, what the hell?
This is Revealed. Luke Evans, Dracula Untold.
That's what's exciting about it. It's something that's never been told. Untold.
Born and raised in the tiny Welsh village of Aberbargoed, Luke Evans knew one thing. He was born to perform. At 17, he received a scholarship to the prestigious London Studio Centre.
It's Bilbo leaving the Shire, basically. I mean, it's how it feels. It was quite a big leap. I remember my mum used to take me to see shows in the West End of London when I fell in love with London. Even as a young child, I always thought one day I was going to live in London. I was ready for it.
And once in London, Luke got his first big break in the play La Cava.
La Cava was a big deal because I was still in college and it was like my first ever audition and I got the juvenile lead.
Luke followed that up with a role in Boy George's notorious production Taboo.
Taboo was actually quite a radical production. It was a real kind of installation piece of theatre. It was immersive. You walked in, and from the moment you walked through the doors, you were literally caught up in the atmosphere of that club.
Taboo had a big pop following because it was obviously Culture Club and the story of Boy George as a young man in London. That was a big deal. We did it in the crypt of a church, which was sacrilegious, really, when you think about what the show was about.
I think it was kind of a breakthrough role for him, actually, that role in Taboo, because it was a big role. You know, he had to really go on kind of an incredible emotional journey.
And multiple roles followed in quick succession.
I did Miss Saigon, then I played Roger in Rent.
That is a huge achievement. It's very, very rare for any actor to work on back-to-back projects. I mean, Luke literally went from show to show to show, and that's because casting directors and directors saw him in one thing, and then they were desperate to kind of cast him in their own projects. It was incredibly rare, and that's why he stood out, actually.
But Luke was itching for a change and wanted to sink his teeth into a more dramatic role.
It's incredibly hard, actually, for musical theatre actors to break into straight theatre, as we call it, or drama, particularly so in London. And Luke was actually one of the very first people to break those boundaries.
This play came up at the Donmar Warehouse, and it was a play about two Welsh boys, and I was like, well, if this isn't a sign that I should do this play, then nothing is. So I wrote a letter, because my agent at the time, she couldn't get me a meeting, and I was adamant that I should be seen. I met the director, I got the job 3 weeks later, and that was the play that really put me on the map as an actor, as an actor.
Evans' acclaimed portrayal of the Welsh boy Vincent had a game-changing effect on his career when a casting director happened to take note of his performance. Before Luke knew it, he was sitting in a room opposite the legendary director Stephen Frears, auditioning for his new film, Tamara Drew.
We started chatting about Richard Burton and my Welsh background and where I'd come from, and then the casting director came in and he just said, well, can he act? Is he any good? And she said, oh yes, he's very good. And he was like, well, I'm fine if you're fine. And that was it. That was my audition.
The film is a comedy, and it was nothing was taken too seriously. We felt very looked after by such an experienced director. It certainly didn't feel like it was his first film. I'm amazed that that was his first.
With dramatic roles under his belt, Luke had found the confidence he needed to head for Hollywood and make the rounds. Now faced with the choice of pursuing a film career and leaving his successful theatre life behind, Luke followed his heart.
He was on the cusp of a serious stage career in terms of drama. He was going to go on to do massive heavyweight roles.
I had a day job at the same time so I could save enough money to go to LA. So I was working for a restaurateur from 9 to 5, and then I'd get on the tube and I'd come into the West End and then get ready and do the show at night. And I saved like £3,500 in 8 months, and then I went to LA.
And Luke soon knew he'd made the right decision. At 30 years old, Luke's film career was off to a rousing start, booking 3 films in just 4 days.
There was a lot of screaming in my head, thinking, what the hell?
His first big get, a role in the big-budget $125 million remake of the classic Clash of the Titans, alongside 2 major stars.
All I can remember is in my head just screaming, oh my God, it's Liam Neeson, and now Ray Fiennes, it's Liam Neeson's Ray Fiennes.
When filming wrapped on Clash, Luke turned in his armour for a trusty sword and cool role in Robin Hood, starring Russell Crowe. And Luke quickly followed that up with Ridley Scott's The Three Musketeers.
I played a very minor role called Sheriff's Thug. It didn't even have a name. I was just grateful to be on a film set of such size and meet Ridley Scott, and that was very special.
Keeping his eyes on the prize, Luke jetted to Montreal, where he was to train for nearly 2 months for the role as Zeus in the dazzling film Immortals, alongside Henry Cavill, Mickey Rourke and Stephen Dorff.
I just saw Henry Cavill without his top on, and I was a bit like, are you serious? Because he'd been training for months and months and months, and I was the last person to be cast in the film, and all of a sudden the enormity of what I had to do in such a small period of time it just came plummeting down in front of me.
Luke was ready for yet another character when he was offered the role of the Bard in Peter Jackson's mega hit The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. It would mean more than a year on location in New Zealand. For Luke, it also meant becoming a part of this very special series.
3 months, 4 months is usually the longest I've ever worked on a film, and to do a year of my life in one place with the same people was really special.
And then gears were quite literally about to shift when Luke was awarded the role of Shaw in film number 6 of the red-hot Fast and Furious series.
Hey, Marker.
And personally thrilled to be part of the blockbuster, Luke was also elated that he'd be filming back home in London.
I needed to do something strong, contemporary, action-based, and I read the script, and the character, he was just perfect for me. I could shave my head for a start. I didn't have to wear any armor or costume. It was just, he was a bad guy. And I got to live in London. I got to live at home, which was probably the best bit, because I'd been away for so long.
But Luke wouldn't be home for long. Coming up, a new Dracula is born, and an incredible epic adventure is captured on screen. For Luke Evans, the road to fame came after he conquered the theatre in London's West End. After taking an early gamble in Hollywood, at 33, Luke was hitting his stride when the role of a lifetime presented itself. With new director Gary Shaw set to helm the film, the production team set out to find their vampire.
I'd seen Luke in Immortals, and I was really impressed. He just commanded the screen, and so he brought that empathy and that tragedy to the character that I think was needed. You know, he really believed and rooted for the guy.
I just finished Fast 6, and it was very successful, and we were discussing other projects that I might be suitable for, and Dracula was one of them. And I was first like, Dracula? You know, it's like, he's some old guy with fangs. And then I read the script and realized it was a complete, refreshing, new take on the origins of this very famous literary figure.
I want the power to save my people, save my family.
He has everything that a Dracula should be. He's the gentlemanly qualities, he has the deep-set eyes, he has commanding presence within a room, and I think that's paramount to the story. You have to believe in the man before you believe in the legend.
Soon after, the film's producers set out to find Vlad his perfect princess.
I auditioned for the film with Luke, we had a screen test together, and in the scene, we're supposed to kiss. So we're doing the scene, and then I just really went for it, you know? I just really made out with him in the audition. And then after the take, everyone was kind of like, whoa, that was a little steamy. And I think we felt this amazing kind of connection.
I mean, the second I met her, I was just like, thank God you're here. You are going to make this whole journey much easier. And she did.
In the casting process, it just puts me at ease. I can see that they had great chemistry in the room. It was so easy to see that they would work really well together.
The role of Morena turns out not to be your average princess.
She is a very strong woman, very principled. She is a wife and a mother. My kind of dramatic line is the love story of the film, and it's about Vlad and Morena's love and the love of their family.
I've missed you.
Something troubles you. The film is very much about what you have to sacrifice.
This woman stands by her man through adversity and is a wonderful mother and a strong, strong female figure in such a male-heavy storyline. But she stands alone, and that's testament to her.
Next, the villain, Vlad's arch nemesis, Mehmed.
I play Mehmed II in Dracula, who was an extraordinary warrior and leader. It's clear from our story that this power-hungry man is seeking revenge. Mehmed is certainly the catalyst for Vlad's decision into becoming the person in which he becomes. But ultimately, he's pretty damn despicable and awful, but good fun to play.
For Luke, there was also a sense of déjà vu in the casting.
I've known Dom for about 6 years now, and one of my first films, Tamara Drew, we played the two love interests of the main character, Gemma Arterton's character, Tamara Drew, and yeah, we were good enemies on film, and then in this film we're enemies again, but on much higher stakes this time. And but he's great. He's very fun, and he's a great actor.
They have this really amazing, loving rivalry between the two of them. They're always trying to one-up each other, but in this kind of brotherhood kind of way.
We really spark off each other. We've always had quite a competitive streak, him and I, in a healthy way, you know. But we're like, I always think of him as my sort of like my brother in a way, and so we're always, you know, we've always had that competitive streak, which I think is quite fun.
For Luke, the biggest challenge was to breathe a new kind of life into this infamous character. Luke's Vlad is a far different Dracula from what generations of movie fans have come to expect.
I think in the sense of Dracula being an actual human being and having an actual family is very different in terms of creating the myth of Dracula. And I think that really we're kind of unfolding it and unpacking that myth and seeing an actual man behind it. At the beginning of the film, he starts off as a human, but then he's kind of faced with this choice of whether or not to go over to the dark side and become Dracula. And I think that throughout the film, he spends his time struggling with that decision.
You will have the strength of 100 men.
At what price?
You have no idea. But I'm going to show you. Drink this.
Luke's got an incredible face, so he can look quite fierce, but also you can have quite a lot of compassion for Luke. He can change quite quickly, and I think that gives that character exactly what that needs.
It's as much about the human as it is about the vampire. And that's interesting because we know Dracula. We've seen it done so brilliantly over the years. But this isn't that Dracula. We are dealing with the beginning of that person. That's what's exciting about it. It's something that's never been told. Untold.
And with this entirely new tale of one of film lore's most familiar villains comes an unfamiliar vision.
It'll be interesting to know what people think of the backstory, because you read a little bit about it in the novel, about him being Vlad in an earlier life.
The idea of the vampire and the fangs and the blood-sucking of neck, that idea of the vampire was not really essential in this story. It had a very heroic, powerful story, and the heart of it.
I think Gary's drawing from a lot of different sources for this film. I think he wanted to take a lot of the kind of classical elements of Dracula and then put them in this kind of action-adventure blender.
It's a story of the man, the historical figure behind the legendary character that Bram Stoker wrote about. But we're bringing it back 500 years before that character is even written about. So it's a whole different story. And it was about a man, and it was given a man that not many people know a huge amount about, and now we're giving him all the layers that somebody like him would have, and you get to see them all. You get to see him weighing up the odds, and the self-sacrifice, and the turmoil, and being a father, and a husband, and a leader, and a king, and in the end, a vampire.
At the early stages, when we first start conceiving of the different ideas and the different approaches and, you know, what vampirism would be and how does, you know, Vlad's world look.
I really loved shooting in Tullymore Forest because you have these huge trees silhouetted in the background with smoke coming through and people dotted throughout the forest. It was very kind of fantastical and stunning. All of these natural locations really kind of helped steep us in a period, and they were really magnificent.
There wasn't a lot of studio space, so we had to find industrial warehouses. It was a bit crazy. We had to try and just, you know, make do with what we had, but, you know, we got through it in the end.
And for the cast, filming was never just another day at the office. Luke, for one, was faced with the daunting task of taking on Vlad's superhuman qualities.
He is a force. There are some pretty intricate fight scenes in the film. He did sword fighting, and he just did so much horseback riding. And I was always so impressed because he would be, you know, doing push-ups before shot, and I would just kind of be standing there like this, feeling like, should I join you? Maybe not. Okay, I'll just be here whenever you're ready.
It's because of the spear and coming off the edge.
I know, that's why you've got to, because what you've got to do then is with the speed you're coming off, you've got to really aim.
There was a hell of a lot of training. I would train in the morning, and then I would go to the stunt hangar, and I would train with the stunt coordinator and choreographer and the stunt guys, and we'd start learning all the fight sequences.
Excellent, excellent. Nice.
I wanted to do them all myself, so that's what I attempted to do, and I did it in the end, but it was a lot of hard work, and my life was just consumed with training, fighting, eating, sleeping, and filming, and that was it.
Inhabiting this fantastical world, the cast and crew were faced with actual grueling and tough weather conditions, which added to the otherworldly feel.
We were shooting out there in like battered winds and huge waves, and suddenly it'd stop and the sunshine would be out, and, you know, we'd grab our shots then, and then we'd, you know, tie everything down and get ready for the next barrage of waves.
The weather was changing constantly, and that was probably the most kind of challenging thing as a production that we had to deal with, because you know, we were out there in the elements, and it was real.
I'm from Ireland, so like that's a regular summer's day. It was muddy, it was rainy, it was windy, it was cold when we were working in the winter. It was actually very, very sunny when we were working at times during the summer, and it was, yeah, we got the full package of weather there.
Add to that intricate and complex wardrobe and design.
I think there's so much detail put into the costumes and the sets. I think my favorite kind of piece of costume that I have, almost this crown made entirely of pearls, and it's just so beautiful. It was so heavy, and wearing that crown all day, I think dented my head, but it was totally one of those things where you're like, I don't care, it's worth it.
You're wearing very brilliantly made and beautiful armor, but it's hard to maneuver in it. So I think you just have to be pretty athletic and prepared and strong, because it's exhausting. Just wearing this stuff, you're fatigued.
Armor and crowns aside, Luke brought his own unique accessory to the role.
He has fangs. Like, he actually has fangs. It's incredible. And when he showed me them for the first time, I was looking at him and I said, I can't believe you actually have fangs. What is that? So he is biologically predisposed to play this role.
The amount of people who ask, have I had these fangs put in my mouth? And I'm like, of course I haven't had these fangs put in my mouth. I've always had fangs. I have the bottoms and the tops. It's very strange. So it was just fate that I was going to end up playing a vampire at some point.
Talent, hard work and a great deal of heart have taken Luke Evans from the tiny Welsh village of Aberbargoed to Hollywood's A-list. And for Luke, it's a journey that is just beginning.
He's sort of a director's dream, really, in that he offers you many different choices, many different ways of how to do a particular moment. You can play a whole range of roles, but once you've cast him, he'll come up with many, many different ideas. He's an incredible hard worker and will absolutely give himself to every project that he's on. It's kind of incredible, but I guess kind of inevitable, because he is who he is. You know, he's very special.
It's my first title role, and it's that moment, you know, it's my moment to prove to them and to the audience that I can hold a leading man and carry off a film of this size, and the potential for many more. So, yeah, it was a big deal. It's a really big deal.
I think Luke is kind of the ultimate hero, because he's so able to do all of the action and the fighting and everything that kind of an action hero has to do. But then he also can bring, I think, the sensitivity of a leading man who's involved in a love story. And I think that's such a hard balance to achieve in a male actor.
We've hopefully put together and given you a journey of epic proportions.
Do you think you are alive because you can fight? You are alive because of what I did to save you! Never forget who I am.